The ninth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita talks about how Krishna pervades all of existence, and Krishna enables a devotee to approach him with devotion in various ways. So in the ninth chapter, this particular verse is that it's primarily talking about approaching spiritual reality. And the previous verse was apichet sudaracharo bhajite mamananya bhak sadureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hi saha Shipram bhavati dharmatma shashvachantim nigacchati kaunteya pratijanihi name bhaktah pranashyati. So he states that even if somebody does something terribly wrong, sudaracharo, if that person still remains devoted to me, bhajate mam ananya bhag, then sadhureva samantavya, such a person is to be considered saintly. Samyak vyavasito hi saha, because the determination is well situated. And soon that person will become reinstated in virtue. Shipram bhavati dharmatma will become virtuous again. Shashvachantim nigacchati, and will attain lasting peace. Shashvat shanti. And then Krishna concludes ultimately, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhaktah pranashyati. O Arjuna, declare that my devotee will never perish. So now when we talk about Krishna's protection, he's also mentioned the same theme a few verses earlier in 922, Yogakshemam vahamyaham. Those who are devoted to me, I provide what they lack and I protect what they have. So the theme of God's protection comes repeatedly in scripture. Now, while we talk about God's protection, and there are many pastimes also which describe how Krishna protects his devotees, there is always this question that when I am praying to God when I'm in trouble, will I be protected? Or especially if we are in trouble and we are seeking help and we're not getting help, or our prayers are not being answered, our problems are not going away, then what exactly is happening? So are we being protected? Say, for example, now we have the pandemic going on, and then it may happen that even devotees may fall sick, and even devotees may succumb at times. So the question comes up that how does God's protection translate into our life? What does it mean practically? That's not good. So there is in the Bhagavad Gita itself, Krishna says earlier that understanding that Krishna is almost impossible for the soul, because Krishna is infinite whereas we are finite. So for example, if we dug a small ditch next to an ocean and then got a bucket and started transferring the water from the ocean into the ditch using the bucket, both there are three factors over here. The ditch is too small to ever contain the water of the ocean. The bucket is too small to transfer water from the ocean. And we ourselves are so weak that we would get tired before we could transfer it. So that ditch, we could say, is our human capacity for understanding. Then the bucket that we have is our capacity to observe and analyze what we are experiencing. And then the transferring the water from the ocean to the pit, to the small pit that we have dug, that is like the endeavors that we make throughout our life, whatever time we have, whatever energy we have. So the purpose of trying to study Krishna Leela or to study Krishna Tattva is never to get an exhaustive understanding of why something happens, of how Krishna protects. We see in the pastime of Bhishma Pitama instructing Yudhishthir Maharaj in the ninth chapter of the 10th canto, of the first canto. There, Bhishma says that even the great souls, they can't understand what the Lord's plan is. But he also says one thing over there, that actually the Lord's plan is ultimately for everyone's welfare. So the now why this two combination? If it's something is for our welfare, then why can't we understand it? So basically, the spiritual path is a path of faith. When we talk about faith, sometimes people think of faith and reason, that our logical, rational capacity for analyzing and understanding things. So faith and reason are sometimes seen as contradictory, but they're not exactly contradictory. Rather, reason and faith can point in the same direction, but faith takes us further than reason. With our logic, we can understand certain things. But with respect to faith, we need to go, with faith, we can go further than how far reason can take us. So in that sense, when we say we can't understand Krishna, that hasn't stopped our acharyas from writing books about Krishna. That hasn't stopped devotees throughout history from writing about Krishna, speaking about Krishna. So we do use our human intelligence based on scripture to try to understand, because even in trying to understand, in trying to analyze, trying to glorify, that effort itself connects us with Krishna. That effort itself gives us absorption in Krishna, and that absorption is the primary protection. So spiritually, so our the to understand the nature of God's love, we need to understand the nature of our own existence. What do I mean by our own existence? That we often divorce the present from the past and the future. And if we understand that our existence is continuous, past, present, and future, and we often divorce our existence of the physical level from the mental and the spiritual levels. So if we think of protection in, say, physical or social or financial terms, which are all material terms, and at the present moment. So the present and the material level, these are only partial levels of our existence. That's why if somebody is watching a movie, and there's a particular character is supposed to be the hero, but that hero is being beaten up, and then we may wonder, what kind of movie is this? I thought this was like a romantic comedy, but this seems to be like a tragedy movie or a horror movie. Did I get the genre wrong? But no, that pounding that the hero might get actually builds up the storyline, so that eventually when the hero wins, then the victory is all the more glorious, because that character has evolved and become stronger through those experiences. So if we divorce the present from the past and the future, then quite often what happens is that we are unable to see what is Krishna doing. If you consider Krishna to be director of the movie, Brahmayam sarvabhutanam yatva mam shantim richasi. Brahmayam, Krishna says that. He's the Lord who causes the wandering of all living beings, wanderings. So we need to look at the past, present, and future. Now, Krishna, see, we look at the present and plan the future. Krishna looks at the future and plans the present. We look at the present and plan the future. No, I'm here and this should happen, that should happen, that should happen. And we wonder, why is this not happening? Why is that not happening? Whereas Krishna looks at the future. Okay, this is what this is where we are meant to go. This is what these are the challenges we are going to face. And say we want to go from place A to place B, and this seems to be the straight path. And if GPS tells us don't go that way, he says, why not? This is easier, this is fast, this is going to take much more time. But it could be that this shorter path, there's going to be a big storm over there. And we are simply seeing from our perspective, which is often a smaller perspective. So we look at the present and plan the future. Krishna looks at the future and plans the present. That's why we can't just look for Krishna's protection in immediate terms. No, I asked for this, and why is this not happening? So we will, so with this background, that not only at the physical, not only we don't divorce the present from the future or the past, but also that we don't divorce the material from the spiritual. Because sometimes the very things that go wrong at the material level, they are what prompt us to become right at the spiritual level. A material breakdown is what often leads to a spiritual breakthrough. A material breakdown leads to a spiritual breakthrough. That's what happens to Arjuna. He has a breakdown at the start of the Bhagavad Gita. He's unable to focus. He just loses his composure and his will to fight. For a warrior, that's a serious breakdown. But through that breakdown, he has the breakthrough in terms of he learns the wisdom of the Bhagavad Gita, and then again his morale is restored, his vision is clarified, and he resumes his fight. So that's one aspect of how Krishna is there for us. Whenever that to understand how Krishna is there for us, we need to expand our vision. So we expand our vision of what? Expand means expand from the present, the past, and the future, and expand from the physical to the spiritual level also. So I'll talk about, this was the first part. Now, second part, I'll talk about this, how Krishna protects in terms of the Mahabharata. I'll use an acronym, PROTECT, PROTECT. So how does Krishna protect basically? Now, there are many ways in which Krishna may protect. And some of the most dramatic incidents of how Krishna protects is, so P is personally. Krishna personally intervenes to protect his devotees. Say for example, in the Mahabharata, when Bhishma and Arjuna were fighting on the 10th day, and Bhishma was fighting wholeheartedly, but Arjuna was fighting half-heartedly. And the dynamic of the story is very sweet. Bhishma had decided that he wanted to see Krishna exhibit his mystic powers, and therefore he attacked Arjuna with full force. And Arjuna was thinking, this is my grandsire, how can I attack him? So Arjuna was fighting half-heartedly, and soon Bhishma started overpowering Arjuna. At that time, seeing this, Krishna himself jumped off the chariot, looked around, found the wheel, the broken wheel of another chariot, picked it up and started charging towards Bhishma. And started charging. And when Bhishma saw this, his purpose had not been actually to attack Arjuna. His purpose had been to demonstrate to the world how Krishna protects his devotees, because Bhishma was also a devotee at the heart. And when he saw this, he put aside his bow. And he said, oh Krishna, dying at your hands will be my perfection. So please, so he just puts aside his bow, and Krishna says, is so angry. Krishna keeps charging towards Bhishma carrying the chakra. Now it's significant here that if we look at other incidents when Krishna uses his Sudarshan chakra. So now Krishna was there on the war field, and when he jumped off the chariot, because a charioteer, he himself did not have any weapons. He had also taken a vow that he would not use any weapons before that. But when he jumped down, now the chariot wheel was not the only thing that was there. There could have been a sword, there could have been a bow and arrow, there could have been a spear. So many things were lying on the ground. So why did he pick up a chakra? Because the chakra reminded him of a Sudarshan chakra. Right? He took up a chariot wheel. And if we look at other times when Krishna releases his Sudarshan chakra, Krishna does not run up to the target. Wherever he is, Krishna just discharges the Sudarshan Chakra and that goes on, beheads the other person. So why did Krishna run toward Bhishma with this chakra? Now you could say this is not Sudarshan Chakra, but Krishna can hurl it with adequate power. Krishna can infuse it with power so that even a wheel could be fatal. So Krishna is so concerned, so anxious that Arjuna be protected, that Krishna wants to make sure that he doesn't miss the target. Like if you are shooting somebody from a distance, we might miss. If we come close and point blank we shoot, the chances of hitting are much higher. So Bhishma goes right up to Krishna goes right close to Bhishma and then he hurls it. So the purpose is that he wants to make sure that he hits the target. Now, of course, Arjuna doesn't want Krishna to even seem to violate his vow of non-aggression, of being a non-combatant in the war. And that's why he calls out to Arjuna, stop Krishna. He calls out to Krishna, Krishna, stop. I will fight. But Krishna is so blinded by anxiety, he doesn't hear. Then Arjuna jumps out of his chariot and starts running. So still Krishna doesn't hear. Then Arjuna just jumps and catches Krishna's thigh, falling. And still Krishna keeps dragging Arjuna. And then finally Arjuna raises his feet and hurls them against the ground. And when he hurls them against the ground, his feet create a ditch, a small kind of trench in the ground, and his feet get caught over there. And then he is holding on to Krishna, and that is how Krishna stops. And then Arjuna tells Krishna, I will fight, I will kill Bhishma, please, you don't have to violate your vow. And then Krishna calms down. So the point here is Krishna was personally intervening. When Arjuna was in danger, this is Krishna personally intervening. And there are incidents like this when Krishna intervenes personally. However, while this is most dramatic, this is not the way Krishna intervenes most often. Krishna's protection can come in various ways. So Krishna can, we are discussing the acronym PROTECT. So P is personally, R is through his representatives. Swair dorbhair asyan adharmam. The Bhagavatam says that Krishna can remove dharma by swair, by his own efforts, dorbhair, by the arms of others. So most of the time in the Kurukshetra war, Krishna himself did not fight, but rather Krishna empowered others. So Krishna can empower his devotees to fight, and they can fight in phenomenal ways. We see that while Arjuna himself was a great archer, but at the end of the Kurukshetra war, Arjuna, when finally came back on the 18th day, normally Krishna would get off the chariot and then Arjuna would get off the chariot. But then on this day, Krishna told Arjuna, you get off the chariot first. Okay. Just like normally if there's a VIP coming, then they're being chauffeured. When the chauffeur gets out of the car and comes and opens the car door for the VIP to come out. So like that, normally Krishna would come out first of the chariot. Krishna told Arjuna, you come out first. Arjuna came out, and as soon as Arjuna came out, Krishna jumped out of the chariot. And the chariot simply exploded into a ball of flame. What had happened? Arjuna was surprised when Krishna said, actually this chariot had been hit so many times that it would have been destroyed long ago. But it is only because of Krishna's presence that it was preserved. So the point we're making over here is Arjuna's prowess was not just Arjuna's prowess. Arjuna had been given that power by Krishna. And that's why eventually when Krishna departed from the world, Arjuna couldn't overpower even some infidel cowherd boys that were there, cowherd men who had attacked him. That is described in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So when we pray to Krishna, sometimes we may wonder, okay, how is Krishna going to respond? So if we expect Krishna to personally intervene, then that may not happen. Many of you may know that story of a person who was caught in a flood, and he prayed to God, please protect me. And then he was waiting, and then some rescue boat came along. He says, come with us. This area is flooding. He says, no, I prayed to God. God will protect me. He says, no, come with us. No, they just went away. And he refused. And then eventually a rescue helicopter came there. And they said, come with us. He says, no, God will protect me. And then the water started rising. And then he says, God, I prayed to you. Why didn't you protect me? And then he heard a voice. He said, it was I who sent the boat for your protection. It was I who sent the helicopter for your protection. Why didn't you take the protection? So quite often, God acts in this world through human agents. In fact, Krishna himself could have fought and won the Kurukshetra war if he had wanted to. Now, if you see the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara Tatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Dhruvani Tirma Mama. So the conclusion of the Gita is that wherever there is Krishna and wherever there is Arjuna, there is victory. Now we may wonder, actually, why is Arjuna needed over there? We could say wherever there is Krishna, there is victory. Wherever there is Krishna, there is fortune. Wherever there is Krishna, there is power. After all, Krishna is a source of power, fortune, victory. So that's of course true. But the purpose of the Gita is not to proclaim God's position. The purpose of the Gita is to change man's disposition. That Arjuna, wherever there is Krishna, there will be victory. But how does Krishna bring about that victory in this world? Krishna brings about that victory usually through some human agents. And how Arjuna, who had been reluctant earlier, became ready by hearing the Bhagavad Gita's message, that is demonstrated in the last verse of the Gita. So Arjuna is not a necessary factor for Krishna being victorious, for victory being there where Krishna is. But for Krishna's plan to manifest in this world, it is done through human agents. That's why when we are in trouble, we needn't expect Krishna's intervention to happen in some miraculous way. Krishna can speak and Krishna can offer us help through seemingly normal ways. Normal ways means that maybe a friend helps us, maybe some devotee helps us. So there are so many practical ways in which we might get help. And a devotee doesn't see that this person is offering help alone. We are grateful to the person who offers help. But we see it is Krishna who is offering us help through that person. When Srila Prabhupada was on the Jaladuta, at that time Prabhupada had to struggle a lot till he eventually got the opportunity to come to America. And Prabhupada kept a journal on the Jaladuta, and therein he writes that Prabhupada was vegetarian, and normally on ships, people often eat flesh. So Sumti Moraji, his sponsor, had told the captain to keep a abundant stock of vegetables and vegetarian food for him. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, thanks to Lord Krishna for enlightening Sumti Moraji from within her heart to make all these arrangements. So Prabhupada is not denying the beneficent role that Sumti Moraji is playing, but Prabhupada is not reducing it to that. It is Krishna who inspired her from within the heart. So the Lord often protects us through his representatives. So that is R. Then O is omnipotence. That sometimes Krishna may exhibit his omnipotence. So Krishna may not come personally, but Krishna simply does something by his omnipotence. So omnipotence here refers to the way he miraculously arranges situations in ways that are beneficial. So for example, when Draupadi famously called out to Krishna when she was about to be dishonored in the Kuru assembly, at that time, if we see some Mahabharata movies or something like that, we might see Krishna coming and giving unlimited sari. But actually, in the Mahabharata, there is no description of Krishna coming. All that happened was that simply her cloth became endless. And just went on and on and on. So the cloth was inexhaustible, and the person who was trying to remove that cloth from her body became exhausted eventually. So here what happened? Krishna exhibited his omnipotence. So Krishna, for example, when Indra tried to destroy Vrindavan by showering rains, Krishna lifted up his Govardhan hill. So lifted up the Govardhan hill. So that is of course Krishna personally present, but Krishna was not just personally present, Krishna was also personally present and exhibiting his omnipotence. So when I talk about the first pastime of Bhishma, Krishna did not exhibit any mystic power over there. Krishna is personally there to protect Arjuna, but Krishna might sometimes exhibit his omnipotence. But the omnipotence can be with his personal presence, the omnipotence may not be with his personal presence. So by Krishna's omnipotence, the omnipotence might manifest through seemingly ordinary means, sometimes through seemingly extraordinary means. But the idea is, Krishna works in various ways. When Srila Prabhupada was in America, and at that time he just didn't have, people were not coming, and Prabhupada didn't have any resources to do publicity. So Prabhupada started using you could say, the oldest means for doing publicity. That was, Prabhupada simply would go out for long walks, and just his being in a saffron dress, an old man, that itself would be curiosity for people. Who is there? Who is this? And Prabhupada was walking on the streets of New York once, and then he looked out and he saw a tall, well-built, bearded man on the other side. And that person was looking at Swami. And then a big truck came in between way, and Prabhupada couldn't see him. And then he turned around and saw that person had stopped and was looking at him. So this person happened to be Howard Wheeler. He was an English teacher, English professor, and he was the first serious follower of Srila Prabhupada in the West. He was with a group of people, Keith and Valley. So Keith became later on Kirtanan, and then Valley became Umapati. So the point is that it was not, when Prabhupada had been trying a lot to try to share Krishna Bhakti and nothing seemed to be happening, Prabhupada, what happened? Krishna just arranged the time when Prabhupada was walking along the streets. There was, at the same time, now actually Howard had been going to his friend's place to take some drugs. At that time, the idea was drugs are the way to spiritual growth. So he was going to take some shots, but while he was going along, he saw this Swami. In fact, he had gone before to India to search for a guru, but somehow he had not been able to find anyone who was appealing enough. He found that people who seemed actually to be spiritual, they didn't know English and they were uncommunicable. And people who knew English seemed to be too mundane and seemed too interested in their money than in anything spiritual. So either way, he felt that they couldn't find anyone. And then he was in the streets of America and he saw this Swami. And then he walked over and met Swami. He said, Swami, are you from India? Prabhupada said, yes. And what about you? He said, no, I am from America, but I have been to India. And he said, I have been searching for a guru. Okay, and Prabhupada said, I give classes over here, please come and bring your friends. So it was, we could say, simply circumstantial. The Prabhupada was there at that time, and Howard was there at that time. But it said coincidences are God's ways of staying anonymous. So Krishna can arrange things in various ways, and we might not see it sometimes as a miracle. We might see it as simply coincidental, but actually those coincidences are God acting. So we don't have to necessarily expect a miraculous intervention from Krishna, but Krishna can exhibit his omnipotence in many ways. So P-R-O-P. Now T is his teachings. That how does Krishna protect us? There is, as we say, prevention is better than cure. So with respect to a pandemic, currently, although the pandemic is rampant all over the world, fortunately, its mortality rate is not extremely high. So unless somebody has previous complications, if they take due precaution, then they are protected. So for such taking such precautions, what we need is we need to be aware. We need to know, okay, these are the ways the virus may infect us, and these are the things which I should avoid. So that's with respect. That's education or teachings. So Krishna protects through his teachings. So for most of us, we may usually not be on a battlefield where we have to physically fight against someone, and there are times when we have physical dangers. But we live in a society where unless somebody is sick on the verge of death, we don't really get into situations where there is physical threat for us too much. For us, the kind of threats that we face are what Arjuna faced on the Kurukshetra battlefield, but before the battle began. In the battle, there was physical threat many times. But before the battle began, what happened was Arjuna had a breakdown. Arjuna had an emotional breakdown. And that's the kind of problems that most people face in today's world. So we all often have our minds, and our minds can easily work against us. So the Bhagavad Gita setting demonstrates how even before our outer problems can attack us, outer problems are like enemies. Bigger than our outer enemies are our inner enemies. So Arjuna's inner enemy was his mind, and it attacked him, and Arjuna was completely paralyzed. So how did Krishna help Arjuna when his enemy attacked him? That was through the teachings of the Gita. Through the teachings of the Gita, Krishna helped him understand that Arjuna, you are different from your mind. So we often talk about misidentifying. So we misidentify with the body, but we also misidentify with our mind. See, we often talk about external and internal. Okay, these are external problems. But when we talk about external and internal, we use the reference point as the body. And everything outside the body is external, everything inside the body is internal. That's how we look at it. However, this reference point is based on the presumption that we are the body. But if you understand that I am the soul, that I am the conscious being, then even the mind is external to us. Not just the physical reality is external to us, but even the mind is external to us. And then identifying ourselves as the spirit, as the conscious being, helps us to disidentify ourselves. Not misidentify, but disidentify, distance ourselves from that identification. And we'll find that our problems won't go away when we disidentify, but often the threat of those problems goes away. Life determines our problems, but our mind determines the size of those problems. So a problem exists, but when our mind dwells on it again and again and again, it just appears so big that we feel I just can't do anything. So Krishna's teachings help us to disidentify ourselves from our mind, and thereby our threats become lesser and lesser. And just as Arjuna became composed and confident by hearing the Bhagavad Gita, so similarly, we may also, when we turn towards the teachings of the Gita and expose ourselves to those teachings regularly, we will find that we will be benefited, we will be uplifted, we will be strengthened to face those problems. So this is a theme which is seen repeatedly later on also when Uddhava is over, when Krishna speaks the Uddhav Gita. So for some great devotees, Krishna might personally come and speak, but for the rest of us, even if he doesn't come and speak to us, still what he has spoken in the past is available for us. And the Bhagavad Gita is not just a historical conversation that happened thousands of years ago. It's also a personal conversation. Personal conversation means that Krishna is present in our own hearts as the Paramatma. And our body is like a chariot. So if we regularly hear the Bhagavad Gita and cherish its message, then that same Krishna who has spoken the Gita to Arjuna thousands of years ago that Krishna from within our hearts will speak the message of the Gita as and when we need it. So that's how the teachings will become accessible to us. The teaching, we will remember those teachings when we need to. So if we keep studying the Gita as a discipline, then remembering the Gita will come to us as a benediction. So we show the dedication to study the Gita, and Krishna reciprocates by giving us the remembrance of the Gita when we need it. Don't, even if we don't consciously think, or our mind is too agitated to remember. Now, as it is said by Lord Varadaraj to Ramacharya's Guru, Kanchipurna, that if a devotee is so agitated or disturbed, the devotee can't remember Krishna, then what does Krishna do? Krishna remembers the devotee and gives the devotee his remembrance. So that is the teachings. So we're discussing the acronym protect, so PROT. Then we come to E. E is empowerment. That Krishna sometimes protects not by miraculously removing the problem. So basically, we are looking at these things. Say, I am here, the problem is here, and we are praying, say, the problem, we want to deal with it. So we want the protection from the problem. So how might Krishna protect? So personally, Krishna might come and take the problem away. That's one way of protection. So representatives means Krishna means send somebody to help us deal with the problem. Then omnipotence is that Krishna might create the situations by his omnipotent will by which that problem goes away, changes the situations. Then T is teachings means the problem is here, we are here, but our mind is making the problem far bigger than it needs to be. Then through our teachings, Krishna gives us the strength to recognize this problem is just being magnified by my mind. Now, E is empowerment. Empowerment means that the problem is here, Krishna gives us strength. Krishna makes us stronger, by which we can face those problems. So this empowerment is often, again, sometimes it may be paranormal, sometimes it may be normal. Paranormal means sometimes a devotee or somebody who is praying might just suddenly get a gust of power. We say there are many cases where, say, if there's a car accident and loved one is being crushed under the car, then suddenly they seem to get like a superhuman strength and they push the car off. Now this has been documented many times, but physically it's just not possible. So what happens is that now those people may not be devoted, they may not even be praying. But at that time, when there is a very great desire to do something, then in reciprocation with that desire, Krishna sometimes empowers. But more importantly, we see in our scriptures that Krishna empowers his devotees to do extraordinary things. So we see Krishna tells Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita in 11:33, Tasmat tamuttishta yasho labhasva chitva shatrun bhungshvarajyam samriddham mayaivaite nihatha purvameva nimitta matram bhavasa vyasachi. So it says nimitta matram bhavasa vyasachi. Just become an instrument for my cause. So Krishna is telling, by my arrangement, your enemies have been removed. Mayaivaite nihatha purvameva. In the 15th chapter of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a description of Arjuna's memories of Krishna after Krishna has departed. And there Arjuna describes the many occasions when he has won. He has won glorious victories. There are some occasions when Krishna is present with Arjuna, but there are some occasions, for example, the Khandava forest. So, for example, the Virata Yuddha rather. In the Virata Yuddha, there was no Krishna with Arjuna. Arjuna was fighting alone. Bhuminjay, the son of the king of Virat, was Arjuna's charioteer at that time. And yet Arjuna won single-handedly against all the Kuru warriors together. So what happened at that time? Actually, it was Arjuna still attributes that victory to Krishna, because Arjuna knows that empowerment came from him. So it is said that Prabhupada was empowered by Krishna. Empowerment doesn't necessarily mean that the problems go away. See, empowerment is not the disappearance of problems, it is the appearance of persistence to persevere through the problems. The problems are here and we are here. Now, if you had seen this Ramayana, which had broadcast recently during the pandemic, which is originally there, so they would have these, say, a demon shoots an arrow, and the maybe Lord Ram shoots an arrow, and the two arrows hit each other, and then the demon's arrow just disappears. So that indicates that Ram's arrow is stronger than the demon's arrow. Whatever. So sometimes we think that like there is a problem, and then we are there, and then as there is a collision between the two, the problem disappears. So it can happen like that, but empowerment means the problems may remain, but a devotee persists in spite of the problems and pushes against the problems. If we look at the Prabhupada's life, we say Prabhupada was an empowered acharya. At the same time, if we read the Leela Prabhupada also faced all kinds of challenges when he was practicing bhakti. So it was not that problems were not there, but Prabhupada was empowered to face those problems. So all of us may find, if we pray to Krishna, then we will get that strength internally, the empowerment to grow big enough so that we can face our problems by Krishna's grace. Then C is protect, we are discussing. C is a combination. Combination means that Krishna can work bringing various things together, by which, so it might be some way in which his teachings are remembered, some way in which the devotee is empowered, some way in some representative provides the guidance. So if you consider the Pandavas, when they were sent to Varnavat, the plan of the Kauravas was to have them burnt. Now at that time, there is no Krishna to intervene. In fact, if you look at the storyline of the Mahabharata, Krishna and the Pandavas met for the first time after Draupadi Swayamvar, where in Draupadi Swayamvar, the Pandavas had come and Krishna along with the Dwarka princes had also come. So at this point, the Pandavas and Krishna had not even met. But how were the Pandavas protected? Now first, when they were going there, Vidura warned them, hey, be careful. Vidura also gave an indication in a cryptic way that the danger would be because of fire. So Vidura, we could say, is Krishna's representative. And then when the Pandavas were living over there, they understood that this Purochan, who was Duryodhana's man over there, who was conspiring to have the Pandavas killed, he would come. But the Pandavas, what they did, they had a tunnel maker who came and he dug a tunnel through the palace. And then after that, they themselves arranged to have a fire set over there. So they used their abilities and then they disappeared. And when they disappeared in the forest, they survived. At that time, when the Pandavas were exhausted, Bhima, he was the strongest among the Pandavas. We sometimes hear of Bhima as Vrukodara, the person who would eat a lot. But then he would also work a lot. So when the Pandavas would get exhausted, their Kunti was there and the other Pandavas there. So Bhima would carry all of them on his shoulders, on his arms, as he ran through the forest. So he had that empowerment. So the point I'm making is sometimes Krishna can work in various ways brought together. So here it was not one particular incident that comprised the protection, but there are multiple set of factors which came together and the Pandavas were protected. So that is combination. And last T is time. Time means that sometimes Krishna may let the problem go on and through time he may protect us. Now why is that? Why can't Krishna protect immediately? See, Krishna has his purposes. So for example, we see that Lord Ram, when Sita was abducted, he did extraordinary things. The extraordinary thing that he did was For example, he had a bridge built across the ocean so that he could reach Lanka, and he took on the whole army of Ravan. So now we could say that when Ravan had come to abduct Sita, at that time Ram had been caught in the forest, and because Maricha had taken him away, misled him away. So now if Ram is God, Ram could simply have leapt back using his mystic powers and be with Sita when Ravana came over there. Now Ram was running as fast as he could, but he didn't reach there in time. So if Ram had to do extraordinary things like bridging an ocean, then why couldn't he simply bridge the gap between himself and Sita at that time? Then the whole abduction could have been avoided. But he had his plan. That plan involved many aspects. That plan involved demonstrating Sita's chastity. That plan involved demonstrating the Vanara's service attitude. That plan involved demonstrating Vibhishan's courage of conviction, by which he could give up the side where he was born and where he had lived, just so that he could come on the side of Dharma. So through it all, the Lord wanted to serve various purposes. And that's why he did what he did. So the Lord could have protected or prevented certain things, but if he let certain things happen, then the result, then he serves many other purposes through that. When Prabhupada started his sharing of Krishna Bhakti, Krishna could have arranged for Prabhupada to be successful immediately in India itself, or in 1940s itself, Krishna could have arranged for Prabhupada to come to America. Maybe not 1940s, Second World War was going on, but toward the end of 1940s, 1950s. But Prabhupada came at a particular time, in a particular age. Why is that? Now, Krishna had his plan. Now, Krishna is in some ways, through Prabhupada's success of outreach demonstrates, for Prabhupada, almost every material factor was against him. At a most fundamental level, his age was against him. Another level, he had no support base, he had no financial base. He didn't even speak the language of his audience. In terms of Prabhupada's language was very English accented. They were from a different culture, a different educational level. Normally, if somebody wants to, there's a devotee friend of mine who's done his PhD in organizational theory. So he told me that he did a case study that Prabhupada starting ISKCON. And he said that any company, if they wanted to expand, okay, we have a branch over here, we want to expand a branch over there, or somebody wants to start a company. If somebody wants to consider, the Krishna conscious movement is of course transcendental. At the same time, it's functioning in the material world. So we want to consider, we can sometimes consider material factors also. But he says that the probability of success would have been so abysmally low that, who is an old man? First of all, an old man has to communicate with teenagers or youth, and the youth have this belief. At that time, the hippies had that idea, don't trust anyone above 30. Because they thought all those people are just from an old generation, they don't know how to think, they don't know how to live. And Prabhupada was not just about 30, Prabhupada was about 60. So double of the age that they were not able to trust. So, Prabhupada's chances of his success were extraordinarily low. But still Prabhupada succeeded. So if Prabhupada had succeeded in India and he had brought a significant body of supporters and financial support when he came to America, then his success wouldn't have been that glorious. So Krishna had his plan. And that's why the protection came in the form of time. And sometimes when we talk about time, that means we also have to understand that the time span extends beyond this body and beyond this life. That sometimes the protection may come not so much in the way a person, what happens to a person in this life, but also beyond this life. So at one level, Abhimanyu was killed. And we might say, was Abhimanyu not protected? by the Lord. But actually, Vyasadeva tells Yudhishthir, who is very disheartened, he says, if somebody dies while diligently doing their duty, then they are going to be delivered. And rather than lamenting for someone who has died in this way, we should lament for those who are still living in this world, because they still have to face the troubles and the temptations of this world and persevere. So, time itself is a form of protection of Krishna, because Krishna serves various purposes. And for all of us, if we are not getting the answers, rather than thinking that our answer is not coming, we need to know that Krishna will answer in his time. We say, but when, what do I do right now? The problem is crushing me right now. No, actually, yes, we may face the difficulties, but through those difficulties, we will grow and become stronger. So, Krishna's manifest protection will come at a particular time, but his unmanifest protection in terms of giving us inner strength, inner wisdom, inner forbearance, that can always be with us. So, in this way, there are multifarious ways in which Krishna protects us. And I'll conclude with one point, that devotion can have many different meanings. Devotion means absorption Krishna, devotion means service attitude toward Krishna. That is all true, but in our context, I'll conclude with this times. Devotion means the rigid refusal to reduce God to the box of our expectations. That we all have certain expectations of how things should work out, and that's understandable. When we human beings live, we will have expectations, but we don't reduce God to our expectations. That, okay, this is what I expect. God can work in ways beyond our expectations also. And that openness to possibility, that we, even if our expectations are not being fulfilled, but we stay open to possibility, Krishna will help in some way or the other. If we keep that openness, we will find that sooner or later, Krishna's protection will become manifest. So I'll summarize. I spoke today on the topic of Krishna's protection. I started by talking about how Krishna is talking about spiritual protection in the verses in the Gita, 9:31-32. That even if a devotee falls away, Krishna will ensure that they come back on the right track. And to understand Krishna's protection, we need to expand our own vision of ourselves. Don't divorce the present from the past or the future. And don't reduce our existence on the material level. There's material and spiritual. And then I talked about the acronym PROTECT. So P was personal intervention that Krishna might do, as he did with Bhishma Pitama. When Bhishma Pitama was threatening Arjuna. Then I talked about representatives, how Krishna might help us through his various agents. And I talked about the example of the boat, the person caught in a flood story. And even the Kurukshetra war, Dharma was established primarily through his representatives. Krishna himself did not fight. Krishna established Dharma through representatives. Then O is omnipotence. This says Krishna came to rescue Draupadi. Krishna came to help the Rajavasis when they were endangered by Indra's reigns. So it is omnipotence. Then T is through teachings. Sometimes Krishna may protect internally by giving us strength, and wisdom and guidance, just as he gave to Arjuna on the Kurukshetra war before the battle began. And then E is empowerment, that a devotee's ability, devotee's power, we see that as Krishna's mercy. And Krishna empowered Arjuna, and Krishna empowered the Pandavas at large. And C was combination, how the Pandavas were protected when they were in Varanavarth through various factors brought together. And last was T, was time, that Krishna sometimes protects as per his time. So he could have protected Sita by just long jumping from the forest to the side of Sita when she was being abducted, instead of having Hanuman having to long jump across the whole ocean, or he having to cross that ocean. But Krishna has his plan, and his plan serves multifarious purposes. So Krishna protected Prabhupada not by removing obstacles to his outreach in India, but by helping him face the outreach obstacles in America. It made him all the more glorious. So devotee, for us, our devotion may manifest not just in our determination to practice bhakti, but also our refusal to reduce Krishna to our expectations, and our maintaining an openness to possibility. That how Krishna helps, let me see that, let me keep my heart open, let me do my part, but then let me keep my heart open. And then Krishna will reveal his protection in due course. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. So are there any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I have this a question. I think most of time, I think we are in this factor of T that, wait for time. Especially we hardly see like, Krishna is going to come and personally protect or, um, you know, uh, we don't even like, he's in the representative, all those things are there, but we hardly relate with these things rather than like, I think many times we get sometimes frustration like when is that time like God is going to help me, assist me, and that frustration also might come like now when you try to put always like wait for time, Krishna is going to act like how long, like that's one of the thing also like we might be stuck into. So how we can look into and put that strength and really trust that factor.
Yeah, that is a challenge. I would say two main things about the patience is that if you look at nature also, things work at their pace. If you look at nature, if somebody is a farmer, when they want harvest, they will not get it immediately. They have to wait for the harvest to come by its own pace. So if we to understand this point that everything takes its time in nature. If a couple wants to have a child, they may conceive, but it doesn't, child is not going to come the next day. So things take their time. And just as we are ready to wait for things within nature, so then sometimes we need to also wait for the Lord of nature to work. And if that's one aspect of looking at it, that nature itself teaches us patience. Secondly, if we consider that basically our our growth or our success, we often think of it in terms of the removal of the outer obstacles or the removal of the problems. Yes, that is there. But sometimes the problems being present may stimulate our growth more than the problems going away. See, when the problems are present, they may stimulate our internal growth, and the problems may going away may lead to the growth being manifested externally. So it's just like, say we want to do something, or we are not able to do something because of a problem. Then at that time, when is this problem going to go away? We may feel that, but it's like, suppose somebody wants to build a big skyscraper, and somehow they are not able to build it. So they may say, oh, I can't do anything. Or oh, I'm not getting this permission or that permission or whatever. But you may not get a permission to build above the ground, but you can build the foundation under the ground. And if the foundation is strong, eventually when the permission comes, then when you build, it will be strong, it will be resilient, it will be long lasting. So similarly for us, sometimes we are too, when we think of time, things not working out our way, we are too caught in thinking that, oh, I'm not able to build the superstructure. Why am I not getting the permission? Why am I not getting the facility? But a building doesn't just require a building's construction doesn't just require the external, it also requires the what is not visible for us below the ground. So we can see that the time when our our problems are not being resolved externally, we can see that time as an opportunity for strengthening our foundation. And if we do that, we will find that eventually, when the foundation is strong and then the problems go away, whatever we build after the problems go away, that will be sturdier, that will last longer. So for us, we need to expand our conception also of growth. So yes, that's how by learning from nature and by seeing the persistence of problems as an opportunity to go inward, we can persevere through those difficult times.
Thank you so much, bro.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. This is Satish. You mentioned about Krishna protecting. You explained in detail as to how Krishna comes in different ways to protect devotees.
Yes.
Why, in even among devotees and non-devotees, and devotees who are devoted their entire life for propagation of the holy name, why the protection and the experiences that they go through are so different, and some are very good. They have all the favorable situations to do what they need to do, and they do what needs to be done. Some, they have all the favorable situation and they don't do what they don't have to do. And some are taken away much sooner, like Maharaj, Bhaktichar Maharaj's case. And then some are protected and kept longer, and some less longer. What is the purpose of all this? What does Krishna see that from all this?
Yeah, so even devotees, their experiences in bhakti are different. Some stay longer, some stay lesser, some are more successful, some are less successful. Yes, see, within the material world, normally Krishna doesn't, we could say, break the laws of material nature. He can, if he wants to, suspend those laws, intervene within those laws, but Krishna lets those laws work out normally. What do I mean by the laws here? I'm not just simply talking about laws of physics. So basically, Krishna lets his transcendence act through the normal working of material nature. Thus, for example, say if a devotee is born in India and that devotee goes to Africa to preach, to share Krishna Bhakti, then the devotee may need a translator. Just that because the devotee is an extraordinary devotee doesn't mean that the devotee will suddenly know the African languages like Swahili or whatever. No, they will have to, if they're going to stay regularly over there, then they learn that language. Or if they're visiting there, then just have a translator. So the point is that there is a material process for education and learning languages, and Krishna's message is spoken. The speciality of Krishna's message is in the content of the message, not so much in the context. It is not that the speaker will suddenly learn a new language. Krishna can do that. So, for example, when he himself descended as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he got even the animals to dance. So Krishna can do that if he wants to. But normally, Krishna works through the principles, through the normal methods of working of material nature. So it can be that a devotee who is not very educated can also, who is not very materially educated, can become a great scriptural scholar and give profound classes. At the same time, it may be that a devotee who is not intellectually inclined may also become a great devotee, but that devotee's dedication is seen through various other services, not necessarily through the deep study of Sanskrit semantics or scriptural technicalities. That means if a devotee doesn't have an intellectual nature, it's not that just by the practice of bhakti that devotee is going to develop intellectual nature and become a great intellectual. It can happen, but that's not the way normally Krishna does things. In fact, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that you serve me according to your nature. In fact, he stresses a lot of serving according to his nature. So, of everybody doing their dharma according to their particular swabhava. So these are 2 points of say language as well as say innate nature. But we could apply this to other factors also. So just as every person comes with every soul is born, the soul is transcendental, and the soul may also be very spiritually evolved in terms of being having a very advanced consciousness, very spiritual consciousness. But still, that soul is embodied in a particular body in a particular setting, particular say historical phase, geographical area, and so that transcendental devotion is manifest through that material instrument, through that material setting. And then if there are limitations of that setting, the devotee will operate within those limitations. The devotion will come out even there, but it will come out differently. So say for example, there might be devotees who are very dedicated to sharing Krishna Bhakti with others. But if that devotee is in a relatively liberal country like America, or the devotee is was in Soviet Russia when it was under communist rule, then the way that devotion will manifest will be different. The devotee might be equally dedicated and equally courageous, but the devotee may not do public Harinam Sankirtan in the country where religion itself is immediately persecuted. That will be foolishness. So basically, all of us, by our past karma, we have a particular kind of body, we are born in a particular kind of setting, and now a devotee who is practicing bhakti is not controlled by karma. Rather, Krishna takes control of the karma and does with the karma what he wants to do. So now karma is just one factor, an important factor, but karma is also a representation of material factors. Just like one's environment, one's innate nature. So similarly, one's past karma, these are also like a factor. So Krishna doesn't necessarily have to act in any ways that are transcendental his transcendence doesn't have to come through the disruption of the material arrangements that he has made for the functioning of the world. His transcendence can manifest even beyond these material arrangements, or rather through these material arrangements also. So each devotee has a particular nature, each devotee has a particular personality, a particular mood, a particular inspiration, and devotees serve accordingly. This variety, so now I'm talking about one more factor beyond all this, beyond the settings, whether it is sociological or psychological. Beyond that, our philosophy is personal, where every soul is a person. And even in the spiritual world, different souls have different services. So some devotees, some gopis serve Krishna very intimately by being the close associates of Radha Krishna. Some of them are manjaris where they serve from a distance. Some may be in some other forms in the spiritual world where they serve accordingly. So the idea is that even in the spiritual world, there is variety. So that variety is of, as Prabhupada would say, variety is the spice of enjoyment. That Krishna relishes the different ways in which different devotees serve. There are, if we study the books like Ujjwal Neelamani, there is a right wing and the left wing gopis, and they all serve differently. So some gopis serve by being very submissive and obedient to Krishna. Some gopis serve by being independent and by demanding from Krishna, and Krishna allows that also. So the point is that there is individuality at the spiritual level also. And now, when things are manifest in the material world, we may not specifically immediately know whether the things that are happening differently, they're happening because of the social setting, because of the psychological nature, or because of the spiritual individuality. There could be any of these, or there could be a combination of all of these. That's why when we want to see the devotional result, it is primarily in terms of the inner absorption of the devotee in Krishna. So by Krishna's plan, sometimes some devotees may be empowered to do extraordinary things, and they may live for many, many years, and they may do extraordinary things. Some devotees, they may live for a shorter time, and in those shorter time, they do lots of things. Some devotees may live for a long time, but what they do is not that what they achieve is extraordinary, but they might just do something very simple or something small, but they do it with extraordinary dedication. And that itself can be an inspiration from others. There are all kinds of souls in the world, and some souls have a lot of abilities. And if they see somebody who's a devotee, and that devotee is also a great achiever, they feel, I want to become like this. But there can be some souls who don't have much abilities, and if they see only the examples of devotees who are like super achievers in a positive spiritual sense, they're doing it for Krishna, but they may feel, I can't do any of these things. Then if devotee has to be like this, then I can never be a devotee. So if somebody is just maybe somebody is doing very simple service, making garlands or cooking, not that these are anyway small services, they are also very important, but they may not be so much in the public eye as, say, giving classes or opening temples or whatever. So, but still, through that also a devotee can get connected with Krishna. So for people who are coming, even if I don't have some extraordinary talents, but still I can also serve Krishna, and I can also be uplifted thereby. So if you understand this principle that Krishna works at multiple levels through his actions, so each devotee, Krishna has a different plan and reciprocation with their particular desires, their particular mood of how they want to serve, their particular situation in which they are serving, and Krishna reciprocates accordingly. So this individuality is a feature of spirituality, and how that individuality manifests, that is dependent on the setting, situations, contexts. So it's not that we reduce our devotion, we rate a particular person's devotion by their material accomplishments. Once a devotee told Prabhupada that Bhaktivinoda Thakur preached in Bengal, Bhaktivinoda Thakur preached in India, and you preached all over the world. Therefore, you are greater than all of them. Prabhupada became grave and angry, and he said, never think like this. He said, it is by their blessings that I have been able to do whatever little I have done. And he says, if the son does more than what the father has done, that doesn't make the son greater than the father. That is the blessings of the father by which the son has been able to do all this. So we don't have to have that comparing mentality. From a functional perspective, we can of course see a particular devotee is a great singer, then engage them in singing. A particular devotee, then they may be able to best contribute through singing, and we may invite them for that kind of engagement. If somebody is good at another service, we give them that service, say speaking or managing or whatever. But the important thing is we don't reduce a devotee's devotion to the manifestations of that devotion at a material level. Because that means what all accomplishments they have done or how long they have done. The Krishna has his own way of reciprocating with his devotees. Okay, so thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Can you take some more questions?
Hare Krishna. Can I ask a question?
Okay, maybe one or two.
Would you be able to take a few more questions?
Yeah, maybe one or two questions.
One or two. We had a few devotees who had raised before. So Shilpi, do you still have a question? I know you had raised your hand.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you. Very wonderful class. You mentioned that material breakdown leads to spiritual breakthrough. So what if a breakdown happens within spirituality or within Krishna consciousness, where devotee takes some extreme action, or something happens with that devotee that takes him away from Krishna? So how can we understand divine protection in this context?
So if there is a spiritual breakdown itself, then where is the protection? Say if that something is taking a devotee away from Krishna. Well, again, when we say something, when we talk about away from Krishna, that is also based on external vision. We never go away from Krishna. Krishna is always there with us in our hearts. So you might say that somebody goes away from the devotee community because of some misunderstandings, or say somebody leaves their body and goes away from a devotional setting, but still Krishna as a Paramatma is there with them. So sometimes it may be that in a particular situation, one may feel that my practicing, it's too difficult or it's impossible for me to practice bhakti. Now, why it may be like that, we don't know. It may be just a perception which needs to be corrected, or there might be some situations which have created that perception, that those situations need to be addressed. But either way, sometimes we may, because we also have free will, we might use that free will in a way that may, at an external level, take us away from Krishna. But because the soul is eternal, and because Krishna's love for the soul is also eternal, and no step, no matter how drastic it is irreversible. Yes, the steps have consequences. Every action that we take has consequences, and the consequences of some actions are far graver than those of others. Still, every action, no action is such that Krishna can't. The actions can't be undone, but Krishna can rebuild whatever we may have. Krishna can help us rebuild whatever we may have burned down or whatever we have done. So Krishna can take care of those things in that way. So the point is that we also have our free will, and sometimes we may feel that the situations are so much that I just can't bear this. And this is not we don't have to see that necessarily as the devotee being defective, or even Krishna not caring for the devotee. So why is that? Because sometimes situations just come in this world. And we talk about how Draupadi was protected by Krishna when she was being dishonored. But beyond that, if you look at the Mahabharata, Draupadi didn't really see Krishna at that time. Nobody saw Krishna. And later on when they are in the forest, when Krishna comes personally to meet the Pandavas, so Draupadi breaks down and she asks, Krishna, why didn't you? I called for your help. I needed you. Why didn't you protect me? Now Krishna doesn't take a holier than thou, I am a god attitude. I am the unquestionable god attitude. How dare you challenge my plans? Krishna just says that I didn't know this gambling match was taking place. So there was a demon Shalva who had attacked Dwarka, and he had devastated Dwarka. So I had to be there to defend Dwarka. As soon as I came to know what had happened, I immediately came here. So Krishna also doesn't take a very judgmental or righteous position. So there are human emotions that come up sometimes, and human emotions can overwhelm. So for us, if we can try to create a support system as much as possible to deal with difficult situations. But sometimes it is, so sometimes somebody might feel that this situation is just not, I just can't deal with it, and they may take some extreme steps. But still, we need to know, no matter what happens, Krishna is always there with a devotee. So if there is spiritual breakdown, we also see that spiritual breakdown also as one part in a multi-part drama. where eventually there will be spiritual reinstatement. So yes, sometimes material breakdown leads to spiritual breakthrough, but if there's a spiritual breakdown, maybe that is what is needed for that devotee to work through some issues and then come toward Krishna. Sometimes somebody may be with Krishna, but then if because of such circumstances, because of their own preconceptions, they're not able to appreciate what Krishna Bhakti is offering them, then maybe going away from there might bring even that appreciation. We see this, yeah. So does it answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There's a question from Veda. The question is, how can children remember protect in their everyday lives? Any special advice for children, teens will be helpful.
So how can as children remember the protect? That's, I would say that at different phases in our life, we go through different situations. Say for example, when if a baby is small and the baby is crying, it's not that the parents should think Krishna will protect. The parents have to protect. So Krishna often acts through his representatives. And in general, we also need to see that there are, as human beings, we go through different phases in our lives. And among all species, it is the human species, you could say the children in the human species, they need protection for the longest amount of time. Sometimes fish lay their eggs and the baby fish are born and they start living on their own. Sometimes birds don't even care for their, I mean, not that they don't care, but they don't have to care for their babies. So in human society, it's been arranged in such a way that the human progeny requires a significant amount of protection. And that is why there is also pair bonding. Animals don't get married because animals don't really have that responsibility of protecting their children. But nature has arranged that the pair bonding that happens between males and females, that is also meant to enhance the function of reproduction. So primarily, I would say that we need to, in childhood, the protection comes through Krishna's representatives, who are our parents, and then there can be other representatives also, our teachers, our guides, others, but that's primarily the parents. And apart from that, childhood is the phase, of course it depends on what age of childhood it is, but that is the phase when also our imagination is not so much inhibited by reason or skepticism. So for example, children, say in the Christian tradition, children believe in Santa Claus. Now you might say Santa Claus is all false. Well, it is false, but at a particular level, particular exercise of the imagination can be healthy. Just like every tradition has fairy tales, and in our tradition also we have the Panchatantra and so many stories like that. So the idea is that if at that time sometimes we use the word imagination to connote it with imaginary as not real. But imagination is not necessarily associated with imaginary as non-real. Imagination means the capacity to visualize, the capacity to use our minds to envision something which we are not able to perceive. So if in childhood, if we hear the pastimes of Krishna, and then those extraordinary activities of Krishna, they become the fuel for our imagination, then that can become like a lasting fuel for our faith throughout our life. Because we all have certain imaginations. If somebody has in their childhood watched a lot of horror movies for whatever reason, then they might just, their imagination will always constantly be filled with fear. So if we have read Krishna's pastimes, read Ram's pastimes, and they have been the fuel for our imagination, then that can actually fuel our faith throughout our life. And I would say most importantly, if we come into the teenage years, then teenage years are very turbulent. So at those times, it's best if we have created, if means we have made the efforts, and our parents and our social setting has also helped us. There are some healthy friendships. See, all of us have a social circle around us, and there are some friends that we have who are popular. And by being with those friends, we also feel that I'll be included in a big group. I'll also get a sense of belonging. I will also become popular. And there are some friends who are actually good for us. Now, if the two are intersecting, that's wonderful, but quite often it doesn't happen that way. So if we have created those kind of friendships, and if we spend a little time with people, we also have some intelligence to pursue, okay, this befriending this person is actually going to, is not going to take me towards a good end. It might be trendy, it might be popular, but it's not going to take me in a good direction. So if you created those friendships with, say, people who, with those friendships that are good for us, then whatever storms come, so this, even those friends can act as Krishna's representatives in some way. They may not act as a in the direct instruction kind of thing, but still, often when things are communicated laterally, that also helps. So if we have grown up in a devotee community, then naturally during our childhood and early teens, some friendships are formed. And if we take adequate efforts to preserve those friendships, then they can also be a big asset for us. And the last point I would say is that if we have, during our formative years, found some way we connect with Krishna, we feel inspired to connect with Krishna, maybe through some interest we have, some talent we have, then that can become like our anchor in our lives. So there is this concept of second-hand faith. Second-hand faith means what? That, say, if our parents were practicing bhakti, and that's why we just learn to practice bhakti ourselves. So now we have not ourselves developed that faith. It is rather the faith of the parents was handed down to us. At one level, it is good because it's better to have a legacy that is spiritually positive rather than spiritually negative. But at some time in our lives, that second-hand faith has to be made first-hand. That means what I have learned, I have to assimilate it. So I have to make my choices. So in many traditions, just like even many conservative, say, Christian traditions, they have a time when somebody might be born a Christian. Sometimes they just baptize the child soon after birth. But sometimes they have the idea that when they go through their teenage and then voluntarily they choose to join the group. So like that, we also have initiation. Now generally initiations in the past were given at very young age, somewhere 10, 12 also. But usually it is older. Initiation is just one external manifestation. But if we have developed our connection with Krishna, maybe somebody plays roles in drama, somebody sings, somebody does a particular service, then that connection will also be our anchor. Through that connection, through the service that we are doing through that connection, that second-hand faith will become first-hand. It will become pratyaksha avagamam, our experience. And that will be the protection that will endure for us, even with the other external supports, they go away. Okay. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Thoughtful question. So, Srila Prabhupada ki